I stood on the old Paekakariki school used to be up the main road, and I was in Standard 6, and we all stood out on the road, on the fence, and the band led the first lot past us, and they'd come off the train at Paekakariki. There were two or three trains brought them up, and we all just waved, and some of them waved back, but most of them were wondering where they were going to, but they went to Mackay's. And at any rate, I'll just add this little bit. In those days, I delivered the Evening Post in Paekakariki for a grocer by the name of Beckett. And the shop we did it from was the one that is at the north end of the platform, in Tilly Road, straight across from the north end of the platform. It's not a grocer's shop now, but at any rate, when I got down there at about 3:15 after school, there wasn't a biscuit, there wasn't a lolly, there wasn't an ice cream, there wasn't anything virtually, and there wasn't for quite some time, because some of the Marines had come across from the railway station, and they just, being a small shop, they just skinned it, bought everything. Well, cheese, the whole lot.
They really outnumbered you, didn't they?
That was just the beginning. That's just my beginning of what I know. Remember.
Well, that's true, because when we arrived here, I had been in American Samoa since April of 1942, and no social life or anything there, no ice cream shops, and then on to Guadalcanal, and then here. And so when you're away from that, Joan Ellis, I keep telling her, during the time I was in New Zealand, I think I ate a quart of ice cream a day.
Well, it didn't take them long to restock the shop, admittedly.
Fantastic.
You'd be a rich man.
Yes.
So, in the school there, to get to the school, you're pretty well going across the camp or around the camp gate.
The camp was being built.
That was Mackay.
I lived in Ocean Road, and with my father, and his house backed onto what is now the school ground. And I used to cut across the back and over and down across the railway line to go to school. But the camp was being built then that year. Marines were in it towards the end of the year, at the north end of it.
That's Camp Paekakariki, the one that took over the golf club.
Just around the corner from, do you know the east end of the school grounds? Yeah. I used to go up along to the end of the pine trees, which there was a big row of pine trees there, and straight down below that, towards the railway line. It was part of the old golf course. Yeah. It was a cookhouse and a storeroom and all the rest of it. And quite often they gave me a meal. If you were at the right time, you could get something to eat. It might be only a bit of bread with some meat in it, but
Claude, you were working.
Two or three things, but the main thing was, as I mentioned earlier, I used to go into Wellington to go to college and then to work. And when I was going to college, coming out of the tunnel, seeing all the boats in the harbour, and a few days later, they were out in front of, just north of the first creek at Paekakariki Beach. Well, that's where they did their landing, but the boats were all along there. And we weren't allowed to go up during the day, but we were allowed to go up after 5 o'clock at night to have a look. I was in the surf club at that stage. There was quite a few of us used to go up and have a look. And what they didn't realise was that with the tides, there were sandbars that formed. And anybody that swum at Paekakariki Beach will know about the sandbars. Well, one night evening we went up and there were 3 landing barges on the sandbars, stuck. Just as the tide was coming in, sitting out of the sand was a seat like that, and it was the back seat of a small bulldozer, which, if you know Paekakariki Beach, if you wriggle your feet like that, you sink. Well, this bulldozer had sunk, and the only thing sticking out of the sand was the seat of it. They brought, I don't know where they brought it from, but they brought a big crane down, and they got it out the next day at low tide. They dug around it and put this crane on it and dragged it out. But while we're at the surf club, which is now the Memorial Hall, there was a couple of landing craft come in right in front of the surf club, and they got these chaps out and put them on stretchers. And they took them up and put them into these vehicles which were right in front of the hall, and they took them away. Well, they were apparently chaps who had injured themselves coming down the nets on the side of the boats. They weren't the ones that got drowned with the sand landing craft being caught in the waves. They were buried, of course, at Mackay's Crossing, and if you can think of Mackay's Crossing as it is now, as you come down the main road as it is now, on the west side you'll see a little cemetery, which used to be the Paekakariki Cemetery at one stage, but not many people in Paekakariki got buried there, bar the Mackays and a few Smiths and what have you, and that's where they put the Marines that actually got drowned, 10 of them I think, and then towards the end of the war they took them up and took them back to America. But what I was going to say was these landing craft, somebody hadn't done any, I don't know, any information or collected any information about the beach at Paekakariki. And that was one of the biggest troubles with Paekakariki. The other thing I wanted to say was, and I don't know if anybody will be upset with what I'm going to say, is that I lived in Ocean Road, and my father, where I was born, and the property backed onto what is now the school ground. And behind my father's fence and the people next door, which was Sewell's, a builder that lived in Paekakariki for many years, was a hill. And on that hill, it was all lupin, quite high lupin. At any rate, they started to level the ground for the school. And at that stage, Wellington Road finished at Ocean Road. There was a sand track across the paddocks to Mairie Street, which was up on the next corner where Pingal Street and that is. Well, this particular day, it was a Monday morning, and the bulldozers had finished and they started to come around and to go along our back fence. And it was our back fence, and then the hill just went up like that. It wasn't a high hill, but anyway, the top of it had been levelled out by Smiths years ago, but they'd never farmed it much, so that it had all overgrown. Well, all of a sudden there was all these screams. And I went out to have a look, and there was all these girls that were rushing out. I knew about it, of course, but they were rushing out and running towards what is now Wellington Road, if you can think of Wellington Road going across. And what had happened was they had all these two-man tents in amongst the lupin bushes. And being Monday, the girls should have gone back to town or back to Palmerston or wherever. But the Americans had built this little, I might say it might have been the first brothel in Paekakariki.
Ask Harry about it. Ask Harry if he remembers.